wondering how I got into this mix.
Hey, what's up, friends? This is Derrick with Conscious Resistance, and today we're going to talk about trauma. Well, if you've followed me for any extended amount of time, or if you've read any of my books or my essays, or just heard me speak, you know that I talk about trauma, and I talk about the need for healing. In fact, the whole premise of the Conscious Resistance website and trilogy of books and movement, so to speak, is to encourage those who understand the struggle for freedom, for self-governance, for sovereignty, those who are anarchists and voluntarists and freethinkers and abolitionists, various titles people use. Those on that side of the spectrum hopefully can be educated to understand the need also for internal freedom, for what the struggle against the internal tyrant, and the need to face your shadow, as some put it, and to uncover your own doubts, fears, and insecurities, and different traumas that you may have picked up in your life and your experience. And of course, each of us having very unique individual upbringings, our doubts, fears, insecurities, and traumas are going to look different person to person. And some things that affect someone in a very difficult way might not affect you at all, and vice versa. But the whole goal is through mindfulness, which I encourage meditation, I encourage things like yoga, things like nonviolent communication, self-reflection, journaling, just having time to yourself to really get in and do that deeper internal work. I encourage that so that one can become more aware of their traumas and the things that need to be healed from, right? Because if you don't understand what your traumas are, then it's very unlikely that you're going to ever heal them or uncover them if you're not really looking for them. Sometimes situations happen and this information arises and you realize, like, holy crap, I've been holding this grudge or this heavy burden my whole life without realizing it, and then you can become free from it by working through it. And that's what I'm after. I'm after freedom not only in the physical realm, when it comes to state and corporate power. Like, I want to be free to not be taxed all my life. I want to be free to to decide what I put in my body and who I spend my time with and what the heck I do with my money, and all those sort of things. Just freedom in general, freedom to organize my life and my own affairs, freedom to come together with other free, powerful, beautiful people to organize and to build strong communities, right? These are the things that I'm after. And I also know that working towards creating freedom in the physical world is not enough. That I know myself, struggling with my own traumas and things that I've uncovered over the years. Some of you more than likely know my story of going to prison. I was arrested in 2005. I had been addicted to crystal meth, and it was in that experience where I started to journal and where I discovered meditation, and in this process started to just write down a lot of my trauma that I experienced. And over the years, from 2005 to about 2008, I was in and out of prison. I ended up doing 18 months behind bars in Texas state institutions, and did a lot of healing and a lot of uncovering, and really looked at the relationship with my birth father and what brought me to the circumstances I found myself in. And that all happened way before I woke up, as an activist or to politics or this sort of thing. It happened more on the kind of spiritual, personal level. So I've been spending this whole 9 years now as an activist, as a journalist, trying to incorporate the lessons I got in that realm into the political awareness and into the awareness of the physical manifestations and structures of power, and trying to encourage other people to do the same, to see that it's not just about overthrowing the king in power and trying to get people to get past voting and to use agorist and counter-economic solutions, which is a part of the solution. But it's not just about that, and it's also equally not just about just meditating and focus on yourself, because you can't just be all emotion. And I think if you're so wrapped up in your own emotional muck, which you need to take time for yourself, it's absolutely necessary. I actually did a video in 2013 called "For the Good of Everyone, Focus on Yourself," and I think that very much still holds true, that if each of us work on ourselves, while also, I think, educating ourselves about the physical world and pulling ourselves out of those institutions and stop using the banks and paying taxes and growing your own food or getting involved in community farming and gardening and just all these decentralized, localized solutions. If we do both those together, we're on the path towards creating a better world. But if we only do one without the other, then I think we probably won't be able to really get things done, right? Because even if we're all better inside and we're healing ourselves and on our healing journey and reflecting and becoming more in tune with ourselves, that's not going to necessarily stop the Henry Kissingers and the Donald Trumps and the Obamas and the Clintons of the world. And people need to take power away from those institutions by removing their support from them. But we also have to uncover our trauma. We have to dig deep and understand those things. So yeah, that's what I focus on. And in my journey of healing over the last 9 years, and well, I guess going on 13 years now since I got arrested and first really started doing this inner work, I first started experimenting with Zen meditation. That's what I first discovered when I was locked up. I read something from the Dhammapada, which is sometimes known as the Buddhist Bible, and it was a collection of verses from the Buddha. And I started reading that, and then I started getting sent books about Zen and Zen meditation, Zazen, as it's known sometimes, and really just that helped me to center myself every day while I was in prison in a situation where I really felt powerless and I had no control of my circumstances. And so I had to do something, I had to do something different, and I was able to basically just, go inside every day, and then also use that reflective mindset to start journaling and start asking myself like how I got to this position. And I uncovered that a lot of my trauma, I think it was fairly obvious by this point, but I realized even further that my trauma came from my relationship with my birth father. He spent most of my life in and out of prison, and those who follow the channel regularly know that he passed away just in July. I think it was July, yeah, when I was on the road for the Midwest tour, or in June for the Midwest tour, and he died from a drug overdose. He's been battling drug addiction my entire life, and he's been in and out of prison my entire life since I was about 2 years old. And yeah, and so I grew up visiting him in prison. I grew up dealing with these circumstances and asking myself why he wasn't around, and really putting a lot of that blame on myself. And so I had to do that work and really start looking at that relationship. And also I had to get to a point where I take personal responsibility for my own actions and not just say, well, I can just blame this on my father because he wasn't here and he was addicted to drugs, so that's why I'm using drugs, and that's why I'm hurting other people because I'm hurt, right? That's not really, I don't want to use it as a cop-out, right? And that's one thing I had to realize too, is that I can see the source of my pain, I can come to understand it, and that's necessary, but it doesn't really serve much purpose to just hold a grudge or to just blame everything on that person, because ultimately I do believe in individual personal responsibility. So I can acknowledge I was hurt. I had, feelings of self-doubt and self-hatred at different points, and feeling not good enough, and just, anger, and all these kinds of different things. And they turned into lots of different actions. The root of it was all this pain, though, and that led me to getting into drugs and all kinds of other things. But at the end of the day, I was still responsible for my decisions, but it wasn't until I was conscious of them that I was able to stop and say, so this is why I've been acting all crazy. This is why I've been feeling this way. This is why I've spent my life feeling depressed. And, I had 3 different suicide attempts growing up. And, all of this is like coming from this relationship. But I became aware of it, and then I was able to overcome it. Or it's still a process. It's still something I'm working on. But you get my point, that if you're not aware of your the problems and the things you need to heal from, then there's no way for you to actually start to heal them and to work on them. So mindfulness is important to the healing process and to uncovering your trauma. Now, I'd like to tell you guys about something, a meditation type exercise. It's not really, it's a meditation of a form that I participated in, and you can look this up. And I want to say this is not like an endorsement of this specific modality of meditation or healing, but my experience and the times I've been involved with it were pretty profound. And it's called body electronics. And if you want to look into it, body electronics, I can't remember the guy's name. I think its last name is Stevenson. And he developed this whole system of looking at the human body as an electronic computer system that each different area of the body could be connected to past trauma, and it could relate to something to do with a masculine relationship or a feminine relationship, and your family, and just he had this whole way of looking at the human body as a grid. And his belief was that different traumas that happen to us, they get they turn into calcium deposits, because these traumas, they turn into crystallizations of calcium or something along these lines. Like I said, this is not an endorsement of his views necessarily, even though I think there is some truth to it. And those traumas then store into the body and turn into cancers and all kinds of different things, right? And he's not the first person to posit this theory. But what he believed was that you could hold pressure points on people, and you could train people to hold points on someone. So you'd be laying down this table, and someone would be holding your hand right here, maybe a couple different points on both sides of it as you're just laying there, right? And they're putting some pressure down on you. And the idea was to try to identify the source of these deposits, right? And then to use like therapy to help people like work through the issues related to those, you know, deposits and to dissolve them. So let me give you an example. The idea being that if you say, and when you're laying down and people are holding pressure points on you, if you feel like you're having a pain on one side of your body, well, that side of your body is going to be connected to a masculine or feminine relationship. So you're feeling it on your left side, you know, on your heart. Okay, well, that's all going to have meaning based on this kind of system he came up with, right? So then they would ask questions. Okay, so what's your relationship like with your mother or with you or your father? And then get you to kind of go through this process and try to get to the root of where that heat, because you'll start to feel your body heat up. People are pushing pressure on you. It's like, wow, like, okay, if you feel anything hot in your body, let us know. And I felt, you know, something in my chest kind of area. Yeah, and so you start to uncover these memories and work through these things, and the idea is that you can dissolve that pain, right, and that trauma and the crystallizations, the deposits, right? Now look, whether or not you believe any of that, it doesn't really matter to me, because I'll show you my experience, and, you know, whether or not I believe it is irrelevant as well, because I recovered a memory through this experience that has been instrumental in my healing. So I was on the table for the session of body electronics, and I had people holding pressure points on me, and I started to feel some heat on my chest, and I let them know about that, right? And I started getting asked questions, and obviously the questions go right to my father's, my relationship with my father, which I knew it would, because that's my main source of trauma. That's my biggest source of trauma. And so he starts asking me, you know, to go back and to think of a memory or a time that I felt, you know, like hurt by my father or something. I can't remember exactly how the memory came up, because I don't remember this at all prior to this experience. But what I remembered in the moment was the feeling of being in my old house that I was in when I was a little kid. I was 7 years old in this memory, and I was in a little baseball uniform. And I remember being like in the garage, looking out of the driveway of my house. And my mom keeps coming in the house into the garage, you know, back and forth, kind of like checking on me. And she's like, hey, we got to go soon. So I realized I'm like in my baseball uniform. My mom's rushing me to leave. And I'm sitting there watching the driveway. And this is one of the times that my father had got out of prison. You know, when I was growing up, he would write letters and make all kinds of promises. And usually he would be back in prison before we even got to see him, you know. So, you know, it would cause all kinds of just crying and just being upset and all that good stuff. So this is one of those times, and he was supposed to be here for my baseball game, and I'm like in the garage in my baseball uniform, just kind of, I could just feel the anxiety of watching and waiting. My mom's saying, we gotta go soon, we gotta go soon. So in the session of body electronics, I'm starting to describe this, and my friend who's leading the session says, no, hold on. I don't want you to tell me about it. I want you to go back and be that 7-year-old version of yourself and to relive it and to describe what it feels like as that little you. And so I started doing that, and you know, I started shedding tears, and I could feel and hear that my eyes were closed, and I'm on the table, and there's about 6 or so people around me, like holding pressure points, and plus my friend kind of leading it with his hand like on my chest. And you know, I was in tears. I could hear other people crying, but I was just totally zoned in. And I truly want healing, especially at this time in my life. It was a very powerful, just like, you know, spiritual healing time for me, and so I was very open to just whatever was coming my way. And so I'm like, you know what, I'm letting all my inhibitions go. I'm not going to worry if I feel silly. I'm going to do this because I need this healing, right? So I totally went in there, and he's like, okay, now I want you as a 7-year-old you to tell your dad what you're feeling. You know, tell him, you know, what would you want to say? And so I just started letting it out, dude. Like, I just started, like, you know, where the fuck were you? Where the fuck you at? Why aren't you here? Like, you know, and I'm just like screaming on the bed, like I'm laying down, just like, crying and screaming, and like feeling that, like, as that 7-year-old me, and then just letting that go. And that was a huge release. And then he told me too, he's like, talk to your 7-year-old self and just say whatever you have to say. And I was able to, you know, through this in a form of meditation, and really, I don't know, maybe even actually like projecting my spiritual self to the past and visiting the 7-year-old version of myself and saying, dude, you're about to go through some crazy shit. You're going to go through a lot of pain. You're going to go through a lot of trauma. You're going to get addicted to drugs. You're going to do all kinds of stuff, but you are going to be so much stronger on the other side of it. Don't let this stop you, you know what I mean? Because I remember being that 7-year-old and just, you know, probably crying myself to bed and whatnot. And so, yeah, man, that was a really beautiful part of my process, and that I'll do a video another time all about that, because I was 7 years old then, And that was a very powerful moment for me that came back to me. And I've actually had powerful things happen to me every 7th year. That's 7 years old then. Again, when I was 14, I got arrested and went to prison the week before I turned 21, right around then. And just seeing my life in chapters of 7. But that's a story for another day. But that helped me to dig deeper, and I still reflect on that memory. And so there are more and more memories and things that I'm uncovering and to heal from the trauma. And I put out a video a couple of weeks ago, kind of having a brief meltdown, and it was really, I took it down, as you guys may have noticed. I took it down because I just needed to get it off my head. And afterwards I was like, okay, it's not necessary to leave that. I said what I need to say. I was a bit stressed out, and that's what happens in life. But I was really, I think, losing touch of what I care about. And what I care about is healing and trying to heal myself and heal other people. And obviously I still have more work to do, and I've been given a chance in this beautiful life to continue to heal and to try to be an influence to my family, my friends, and some of you guys out there, and maybe work with you guys and be inspired by you. And I'm going to use that for whatever good I can. I have very little faith in most of humanity and don't see a lot of good coming in the external world, especially as it relates to the political and corporate power. But I do think that there's a lot of hope that we can offer as individuals to our communities by working together and trying to heal ourselves. So the last thing I want to mention has to do with addiction, depression, suicide. So I kind of briefly said, I attempted to kill myself 3 times, once when I was very little, then again when I was a teenager a couple different times. I was trying to eat pills and just cutting myself and things like that. And it took me a lot of uncovering that trauma and healing that trauma and replacing some negative thoughts with more empowering thoughts to get past that. And it's still an ongoing journey. As a 33-year-old man, some of the same mistakes I've made and some of the same traumas and the insecurities I've had since I was a teenager, 13-year-old kid, are still with me. So it's an ongoing journey, but I like to be open about it and honest about it and vulnerable about it so that I can hopefully connect to others who experience these things. And I have. One of the things I've experienced being on the road and talking about this is some of you out there have shared your stories with me, and you say, well, I've never used drugs, Derrick, but this is the way that I've struggled, or you share something that you've been through. And I happen to notice that, whether you've used drugs or had some other form of bypassing, some way to kind of route around your trauma and to avoid actually dealing with your struggles. It could be gambling, it could be sex, it could be drugs, it could be just distractions of all kinds, especially in the age we live in, the digital age, right? But many of us have had these issues, and now we find ourselves overcoming them, and we end up becoming anarchists or freedom activists, or whatever titles you want to wear, right? I've noticed a lot of you and had conversations with a lot of you at different events, and it's been brought to my attention that perhaps we need some sort of support group for those of us who are anarchist-minded, like a non-state, non-AA type of support/recovery group. I don't know what this looks like exactly, but I'm definitely interested in it because I would like to speak more to kids who've gone through addiction and who've had struggles with depression, who've had families with drug and alcohol abuse. But I don't want to do it in this, with the state. I don't want to do it in this big brother, big sister type of way. I want to do it independently. And I don't know. I'm just throwing ideas out there because it seems like there's a need for some type of support group for people who are recovering from drug addiction, recovering from depression, need support, just that community support. And the beautiful thing is concepts like freedom cells, freedomcells.org, that I've talked about for years, could also be used in this way. We could come together and support each other. I'm going to do another video on that where we'll get more into that whole thing. But my point here is I would love to be involved in the creation of some sort of new group, or if there's a group out there already that I should know about. But let's talk about this. Let's get into this and think about how we can be supportive for each other as we uncover our trauma, we get past our addictions and our different negative unhealthy behaviors. Because at the end of the day, just like with me, my drug addiction and my use of crystal meth and other things was just a way to self-medicate the deeper pains that I had. And because I was stuck in those deeper pains, I couldn't even see what was going on in the world around me, right? So the sooner that we help our brothers and sisters heal from their own trauma and get to the root of their pain and get past just the surface level of the addictions and all the other unhealthy behaviors, then the more likely they will be to see their own power and to see the unnecessary, the unnecessary role of government and of corporate power, and see that people don't need those institutions. We don't need centralized authority. We are smart enough, beautiful enough, powerful enough, intelligent enough, and capable enough ruling our own lives and our own affairs. So I hope that you guys will look into this. Let's have a good conversation about this. Share some ideas below. Thank you guys so much for watching and viewing and supporting us here at The Conscious Resistance. We've got a lot of exciting content coming your way, and I hope you will stay tuned. Follow us all over the internet. Bookmark our website, theconsciousresistance.com, before all of our channels get taken down, and we'll see you out there. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, you are free. Peace.